So today I have with me the CEO of the Colombo Stock Exchange, Mr. Rajeeva Bandaranaike. How is the Colombo Stock Exchange doing currently?
Yes, so the stock market, as you are well aware, is got activated in recent times.
Yeah.
There was a somewhat of a lull just prior to the elections, the presidential election. But once the election was done, we have seen a renewed interest in the stock market. So if you look at the market broadly, if you look at the price indices, there has been a significant improvement in the price indices, the all share price index and the S&P SL20 index.
Motion we saw before the election, do you think that played a role? I think there was a lot of conversations going on that the election brought in some positive changes with improvement.
Yes, Mariel. Now, what happens is markets dislike uncertainty.
Right.
And once the elections are done and the new president was elected, I think that removed the uncertainty.
Right.
And I think investors took it positively, and we have seen the market, I think, responding and reacting to that result as well. Yes.
Now, in the recent years, Mr. Rajiv, we have seen a few large companies sort of delisting from the stock exchange. So, what steps can be taken to sort of ensure that the Colombo Stock Exchange remains as an attractive place for companies to raise capital, and also what more can be done to sort of encourage growth?
Yes, so let's look at why the two a few companies that delisted.
Yeah.
When you look at a listing of a company, there are a number of factors why a company would come into a stock market and get themselves listed. And at times, depending on the policy of that particular company and their business trajectory, you will find companies coming in and moving out of stock market. So I think although there was some concern, I don't think we need to get unduly worried about some of the delistings, simply because some of these companies had very good reason for delisting. For example, if I do mention, if you take one company, recently was Nestle Lanka. I think at a global level, they have, on matter of policy, decided to move out of markets that they don't raise money in. Some of these companies have really not raised money, but got listed for more price discovery reasons. So you would find that there are more global, regional reasons for such delistings. Then if you take I think the question of Expo Lanka, which also delisted, which was a fairly sizable and a large company, there again you will find that much of the business of Expo in recent times have been out of Sri Lanka, and only a small portion remain. So I think from a company perspective, it doesn't make sense to remain listed and adhere to all the compliance here locally, whereas most of their business operations out, and I think they took a considered view as a matter of policy to move out of Sri Lanka. It does not mean that these companies have moved out of Sri Lanka. No, their business operations remain. It's just that they moved out of listing. So I think there are times where companies move in and out of listings. To deal with the second part of our question as to what do we do to encourage listings. So there is an ongoing effort that we have. We have a separate actually unit, issuer relations unit, which keeps talking to companies, identifying potential companies, and engaging with those potential companies, engaging with market intermediaries such as investment banks to encourage companies to list on the stock market. And for that we have created a fairly wide criteria, so that companies, a cross section of companies, clearly can make use of these capital raising opportunities. So we have, for the smaller companies, the SME board, which is called the Empower board. Then we have the Dirisavi board for the mid-sized companies. Then you have the main board for the larger companies. And then you also have, we have created a separate board, Catalyst board, which will cater to state-owned enterprises if they wish to list. And then again, we also have a multi-currency board, where companies can, overseas companies can potentially come and list here. There are some Maldivian companies that are looking at dual listings. And also local companies have the option of raising dollar-denominated debt and equity. So we have a separate board for that. So there is a wide range of options available for for companies. So we are constantly engaging, identifying and engaging with these companies, and there's a significant amount of resources and effort on the part of getting companies also to look at the stock market as a potential way of raising capital.
Sir, approximately how many listed companies do we have under the Colombo Stock Exchange?
So we have 284 as of now.
As of
In addition, we have I think about 26 corporate debt issues as well.
Right. So moving on into now, the CSE also operates, as you mentioned, the All Share Price Index.
Yeah.
So could you explain how these indices work and what's the role that they have and what's their role in tracking market performances?
Yes, so we use two main indices.
Okay.
One is called the All Share Price Index. So the All Share Price Index includes all of the listed securities of all the companies, and this index measures the price movement of those shares on a particular day. So it's a real-time calculated index, and we call it the float weighted because we take into account only the public float of those companies to be included in that, the number of shares in the public float. So
Right.
it's more representative of the liquidity of those shares as well. So this All Share Price Index will measure the price movement of all those securities. So on a daily basis we report it, and
Yeah.
you will find indices moving up and down. So let's say, for example, today, for example, as we speak, the All Share Price Index again has increased by about 50 or 60 points. That is
Right.
indication that a majority of the companies that are traded today, the prices have increased in those companies. So we have seen the All Share Price Index moving up, for example. On a day that is moving down, that is indicator
Yeah.
that more companies have seen price declines than inclines. So that's a measure of the movement of price indices. Now we have another index called the S&P SL20 price index. So that measures the movement of the 20 largest, most liquid stocks that are in the that are listed on the stock market. It's actually co-branded index with Dow Jones, S&P Global, and this index is generally used by foreign investors because those companies are larger and more liquid. So where foreign and institutional investors are concerned, they are more inclined to look at companies in that index because they can get in and get out easily because of the liquidity in the share. So that particular index is generally tracked by institutional and foreign investors. So that measures the movement of those 20 stocks. Then in addition, we also publish 22 sector indices.
Right.
So each sector has an index. For example, the manufacturing sector or the consumer durable sector, the banking finance sector. So that measures the movement of stocks that are of companies that are in the particular sector. So there are those sub indices as well that are published. And then we have another thing called the TRI, that's the total return index. Now that index, in addition to liquidity and the size, it takes the dividends as well. So a measure of profitability included in that particular index. So all those indexes are published on a daily basis.
There's a lot of intricacies that come along in the stock exchange. Mr. Raju, I would ask you now, the stock exchange, how do you all sort of deal with companies that fail to submit their financial statements during that specific time period? How do you all sort of address this, and does this have an impact on investor confidence in the long run?
Yes, so the difference between a company that is listed and not listed is this amount of information that is made available. So let's say you invest in a company that is not listed, you will not have visibility into the operations of the company because there is no authority, there is no place where that information is presented. But if you invest in a listed company, the main advantage and difference as far as an investor is concerned is that you will have access to a large pool of information, and that information is well structured, and there is the stock exchange which is duty bound to get all these companies to disclose that information in a timely manner. So financial statements is one of those information pieces that have to be disclosed to the market. So there we have a set of rules to ensure that companies do make timely disclosures of all their annual financial statements. Now, in the event, first and foremost, a company has to publish an annual report within 5 months of the end of the financial year.
Right.
So, let's say it's a December, year-ended December company.
Yes.
So, by May of next year, they have to publish the annual report, and that has to be uploaded on the stock exchange website. Now, if they fail to do that, what we do is within 5 days of the end of the 5 months, we transfer that company to a board called a watch list. So, we have segregated those companies, and then we have a watch list board, and companies that are non-compliant in any form is transferred to a watch list. So, then moment the company is transferred to a watch list, then it's like a signal to investors that there is something not quite right with the company, and you need to really look at your investment in that context. Why, for example, has the company not made those disclosures? So, we transfer it to the watch list, and then there are certain enforcement actions that we take against those companies.
Is the company penalized?
Yes, they are. In fact, fairly heavy strictures on the company. We impose a fine on the directors of the company if they continue to fail to submit the annual accounts, and there is a fine of 1 million rupees per director for a delay over 1 month, and then for every other month that they continue to delay, there is a fine of 500,000 per month, going up to a maximum of 5 million. So, fairly stringent punitive measures on the directors of the company to ensure that that information is disclosed, because the financial statements is sacrosanct. That's what investors would rely on to look at the health of a company.
Definitely.
So, we believe that if a company cannot make timely disclosures, then it's not fair by the investors who have invested money. So, there are stringent enforcement measures, and there are more measures. Then after a period of 3 months, we impose a suspension on the trading of the shares of the company, simply to protect other investors who may keep buying those shares, because they may not fully understand or realize the situation that the company is, and without proper disclosure, it is felt that more investors should not be buying those shares. So, shares of the company are suspended after a period of 3 months, and if they continue not to submit, then after a further period of 12 months, we will even go to the extent of delisting the company, taking the shares off the list.
So, the stock exchange has the power to sort of to delist a company if they don't sort of comply.
Yes. So, there is a lot of focus on, and we have attached a lot of importance on the submission of financial statements.
So, what about now investors who have already put their money into companies that don't comply with reporting standards? What steps have been put into place to sort of ensure transparency and to protect them as well at the same time, simultaneously?
So, where an investor is concerned, I think first and foremost you need to do your own homework before getting into a particular share of a company. And that's where this aspect of financial literacy comes in. So, it's very important to invest not only your money but your time as well in studying a company before you get into that, and getting proper advice, looking at the background of the company, who is running the company, and what growth prospects are there in the company. Is the company doing well, for example? What are the future projections of the company? Read up some research reports. So, you have to do a lot of homework before you get into stock market.
You can't just walk in.
No, it's not like investing in a fixed deposit or getting into any other form of investment. This requires some effort on your part, and you need to take responsibility for your investment decisions ultimately. So, you need to really do some investing of some time in prior to investing, and once you do that, and once you get in, the advantage in a listed security, as I told you, is the disclosure regime, so that any material information pertaining to the company is immediately disclosed to the market. And we have had the rules, very stringent rules, to ensure that companies have to make timely disclosures, and that's the only way as an investor you would know if something is going wrong with the company. And you have option, you have always the option, since the shares are listed, you can sell your shares and move out. When you make an investment in a company, you must not fall in love with the company. You are going there for an investment, you are going there for a purpose, you are going there to get a return. And if it's not working for you, and you
Yeah.
feel that there's something wrong with the company, you must immediately exit and get into another company. Because there are periods where some companies do well, some companies do badly.
Fluctuations.
So I think
Yeah.
you need to be constantly looking at your investment, watching your investment, talking to your investment advisor, and see that that investment really works for you.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I think that investment in time
Yeah.
is important when you're talking about a stock market investment. Yeah.
Definitely. So now you mentioned that there are around 284 listed
Yes.
companies around that area. Are there any specific strategies that the Colombo Stock Exchange is actively using to sort of increase the amount of listings for the stock exchange? And are there any incentives that are being offered to encourage businesses to sort of go public?
Yeah, so if you are looking at some kind of tax incentive, no, there are no particular tax incentives as such. And particularly given the scenario, I don't think we can expect that level of policy support. But there are a number of benefits in listing. And I think those are very good reasons why a company should really consider a listing. For example, raising of capital is one option,
Right.
where if your company is achieving that level of growth and your internal funding may not be sufficient. Your bank borrowings may not be the most suitable because you cannot be highly leveraged. There's a limit to
Yeah.
which you can borrow. Then your company still requires money and capital to expand. That's the time you need to reach out to capital markets. And that's one good option where you can raise funds, long-term funds, to fuel the growth of your company. Then the other main reason why a company can look at a listing is you discover a price for your shares. So as long as your company is unlisted, your valuation of your company will be limited to the book value that you have. But the moment that you take it to the market and list your company, you will find that the market will place a value on your share, and that can be many times your book value. So there will be a market price established, and there's instant wealth creation for shareholders. So as shareholders, you will suddenly realize by listing your company, your wealth increases because there is a market price that is placed onto your share. So it makes very good sense for a company to list because there is a price discovery mechanism built in. Then other than that, there are these other benefits for a company, like in the terms of a profile and image. The fact that you are listed is you're being considered as a company that is able to adhere to a good governance regime. There's transparency, there's accountability, all that when you are listed. So as an investor, you have confidence that this company is a well-governed company. They are running the company well because of all the regulatory regime that you are subjected to.
Yeah.
So your customers, your suppliers, your creditors, all of them will place you on a better footing, and you might get better terms too, simply
Right.
because you are listed. And then ability to attract long-term investors, ability to partner overseas various business ventures, etc. And also you will find that the companies are able to attract and retain better talent,
Yeah.
because more people will be willing to join your company.
Right.
Because you are a well-run company, and then there are various employee share option schemes that you can implement with a listing, which also will be like a catalyst for retaining good staff. So there are a number of benefits, quite apart from any policy initiative. There are a lot of good reasons why a company could get listed and make use of the market opportunity.
Sir, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's about 2 to 3% of our Sri Lankan population that are sort of actively investing in the stock market. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're right. So let us look into this aspect of why we have kind of
Yeah.
a relatively smaller market. For one thing, if you look at relatively, our stock market has a very short history of about 40 years. We are actually celebrating 40 years next year.
Right.
So if you compare with India, for example, those stock markets have been around for about 150 years. Yes, share trading has been in Sri Lanka for over 100 years, but it was really taken out to the people only 40 years ago with the incorporation of the stock exchange in its
yeah.
present form. So we have a relatively short history in that sense. Secondly, I think the lack of financial literacy
Yes.
also acts as a barrier for many people to get into the stock market. The fact that you don't know enough is one reason why a lot of people will be hesitant to get into the stock market. So I think improvement in financial literacy among a larger segment of population is going to be necessary, and therefore broad basing the market becomes very important. Now if you look at the market today, we have about 22,000 people on any given month who are considered active, who do at least one transaction a month. So that is relatively small. Of course, it was something like 42,000 during the active days. Now we are between 22 to 25,000 people on any given month. And if you look at the size, there are about 250,000 people who will hold a portfolio in their account. So that's the size you are looking at, although we have something like 800,000 CDS accounts, people who have open accounts to trade. So I think broad base in the market is the need of the hour, and for that we of course have implemented a program of work. Now it has been going on for several years in collaboration with the Securities and Exchange Commission to broad base the market. We maintain 10 regional offices around Sri Lanka to promote the concept of stock market investing. But this is tied very much to the proper understanding being given to people about the stock market. This, as I said earlier, this is not something that you should get into unless you really understand it. For that reason, I think a lot of work in improving financial literacy is a needed hour.
And maybe it should be implemented from the grassroots level of education, so
Exactly.
starting from school.
Yes.
At maybe not the entire concept, but at least a basic understanding. Thereafter, we capitalize on that.
Very true. So if you look at all of us, we were taught savings.
Yeah.
To save in a bank,
Yeah.
kind of rupil kind of concept,
Yeah.
save. But there's a big difference between saving and investment. When you save, so when you invest, you grow your wealth. So that is what is important. So this concept of savings versus investment, concept of risk and return, higher the risk, higher the reward, lower the risk, lower the reward. So those concepts have to be ingrained probably at school level. But Mariela, we are doing a lot of work at school level, at university level, and at investor level. Now we started a concept last year where we established capital market clubs in schools. We selected 100 schools around the country which had the best A-level results, and we established what we call a capital market clubs. We did it in collaboration with the Ministry of Education and the Securities and Exchange Commission of Sri Lanka, and it has proved quite successful, lot of interest. So we are taking students quite young and teaching them this concept of capital market investment.
And I think there's no better place to learn about the stock rather than from the stock exchange itself. So that is a great initiative that is being put in place to sort of create awareness about the stock exchange and how it really works. So keeping that in mind, it's time we head into our first break this evening. Remain with us and we will be back. Welcome back to the show this Monday evening. We are in conversation with Mr. Rajeeva Bandaranaike. Once again, thank you for being here in the studios to talk about all things regarding the Colombo Stock Exchange. So a widely spoken about topic is are the SDGs. What is the Colombo Stock Exchange doing? Is there any sort of collaboration or framework that has been put in place to sort of navigate through these SDGs?
Yes, so mostly with regard to reporting, we have been encouraging listed companies to do sustainability reporting as well as integrated reporting to go towards better ESG disclosures and also in line with the SDG goals of the government. So one initiative that we did recently was to tie up with the Global Reporting Initiative, GRI South Asia, which is the global standard for sustainability reporting framework. So what we did is we tied up with GRI South Asia, and we started a series of programs
Right.
targeted at companies that were not doing sustainability reporting. And I think we have been running this program for the last 4-5 years, and we have seen good traction in terms of where the number of companies that do sustainability reporting, ESG reporting, has now increased
Right.
from about, which was about at about 60 odd companies. Now we have about 130 companies
Right.
that are doing sustainability and ESG reporting. So there is a lot of focus in that. We are also looking at constructing an ESG index, where we will construct the index and have companies included in that, companies who conform to minimum ESG scores to be included in the index. So we are hoping that we can publish that index somewhere next year. Then in addition, of course, the encouragement that we do, we tie up with a lot of these professional institutes like the Sri Lanka Chartered Institute of Sri Lanka, CMA Sri Lanka, ACCA, etc. Those bodies where good sustainability reporting is encouraged. So there's a lot of focus there. So more recently, we also launched a framework for sustainability bonds,
Right.
encouraging companies to go green. So we laid down the framework. The Securities and Exchange Commission approved the rules pertaining to the issue of sustainability bonds, which has green and blue bonds. And so we actively work with people like particularly the Asian Development Bank, the ADB,
Right.
which helped the SCC and us to develop a framework for green bonds. And then we also worked with other agencies like the IFC, the UNDP, etc., to encourage companies to start looking. And we were actively engaging with prospective issuers. And within about a short period of about 1 year, we had the first green bond being issued this year. DFCC Bank came up with the first green bond, and now another bank has also announced the issue of a green bond, and we are likely to see a third corporate also, hopefully before the end of the year, issuing a green bond. So I think there is now a fair bit of interest to get into more environmental friendly financing.
Yeah.
And we are seeing a fair bit of interest among corporates in going green. And
Definitely.
on our side, we are giving a lot of encouragement
Yeah.
to in that space.
So now there's been also significant focus on improving the capital market infrastructure as well. So are there any new developments taking place in the Colombo Stock Exchange in this regard?
Yes, so we are continuously benchmarking global standards and seeing how we can take Sri Lanka up there. So during good times and bad, we have been continuously investing in infrastructure, and I think we, as of now, we have built a fairly robust capital market infrastructure within the country. Recently, we moved to what we call a delivery versus payment system. Earlier, there was an anomaly. When you bought shares, you got shares instantly to your account, but the seller got paid 3 days later. So there was a 3-day risk.
Right.
So we eliminated that by having a delivery versus payment system, where you deliver shares only when you pay. So the payment and the delivery happens on the same day. So that's a significant improvement where market infrastructure is concerned. And now we are going a step further next year to offer a guarantee for all buyers and sellers. So as a buyer, if you come into the stock market, you will be ensured of your shares. So we have created an intermediary company called a clearing company, which is a 100% owned subsidiary of the stock exchange, which will guarantee delivery of shares to any buyer. Right now, there is no one guaranteeing it. And similarly, on the selling side, we will also guarantee that the seller will receive the funds for the shares. We will sell shares, you will get money, and this company will guarantee that you will get the funds. So it acts as a buyer for every seller and a seller for every buyer, bringing in element of credibility to the market, so that there is certainty when you trade. You are certain of getting a share, you are certain of getting your money when you sell. So that particularly for foreign investors become very important. So it's called a central counterparty system, and a very significant development where our market is concerned, and on putting us on par with many more developed markets. So we are in the process of implementing the system. I think come next year first quarter, we should be able to implement that. Then we shorten the settlement cycle. We were at T+3. So if you buy shares, you will settle on T+3. 3 days later, we
Right.
shortened it to 2 days. So by shortening the settlement cycle, your risk is actually getting reduced. Then there are lots of other developments, like we are setting up buying a real-time surveillance system to ensure better
Right.
surveillance. So a lot of developments. And on the reporting side, we are implementing what we call a XBRL system of financial reporting. That's a kind of a standard common template across all companies to report their P&L and balance sheet and all that. So there is comparability. Right now, different formats are used. Some send it in PDF form and all
Right.
sorts of things. So as an investor, as a researcher, if you want to play with the numbers,
Yeah.
you have a standard template. Whatever
To make
company
it
that
easy.
it's comparable, and it's comparable globally as well. You can compare
Right.
one company here in Sri Lanka against another company globally. So comparability becomes very important. So we're doing that type of development as well. Yeah.
Definitely. So now we have a few questions coming to you from the public. So starting off with the first question. Now SMEs are also referred to sort of the backbone of the economy in certain instances. Are there any efforts to encourage more SMEs to list on the Colombo Stock Exchange, and how can the exchange support their growth in the long run? And are there any criteria which is needed for an SME to be listed?
Yeah. So we recognized that a couple of years back, and we have set up a separate board called the Empower Board, which is specifically catering to SMEs. And we already have 5 SME companies listed on that board with very different listing criteria. So it is not as stringent as the main board and the other board. So very different criteria, almost free of cost in terms of initial cost, where SMEs can make use of this particular board and list. Even the country listing requirements are less stringent, where we have facilitated. So all the rules etc. have been framed in such a manner that
Right.
will cater to a typical SME company. And we are also running a program with USAID, where USAID has come forward with a hand-holding exercise, where they are funding up to quite a significant amount in the pre-operational expenses in with regard to a listing, which is again a good incentive
Yeah.
for any SME, and some of these SMEs have really made use of that as well. So you have some funding tied up to meet your initial listing expenses, like for example pay the investment bank etc. So there is an entire framework that has been set up, and we have been very aggressive in promoting listings on SMEs and communicating the ability for SMEs to also make use of market movements. We have had regional forums in Jaffna to Kandy to Matara, all over Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
And we got the first listing out of Colombo from a company in Jaffna. It's a
Right.
women-owned company,
No.
export-oriented, and we listed that company from Jaffna. There's another one coming from Anuradhapura. We have one coming from Kurunegala. We have also one in the pipeline from Matara. So I think our efforts are meeting with some success, because there are
Definitely,
companies
yeah.
out, SME company from outside areas in Colombo who are now looking at making use of the market as well. So there's a lot of information on our website that you can get, and we're certainly catering to the SME sector
SMEs
as well.
The next question coming away sir, from our people is, if one is looking at heading into becoming a stockbroker, what is the process like?
Yeah, so I think there is a certification that you need to get, a stockbroker certification,
Okay.
which is a course of study. It's a 9 months program which you have to follow first and get yourself certified. That's a course of study. It's like a equivalent to a diploma,
Right.
where it's conducted by the Securities and Exchange Commission. You can register for that course, follow that course, and get that accreditation. It is only with that you can join a stockbroking firm and work as an investment advisor.
Right.
Of course, there are certain exemptions that are now given for if you have done your degree, SEMA, accountancy qualifications. There are exemptions that are also given. So that's one part. If you have already done your other studies, your first degree and your MBAs, etc., also those are also accepted qualifications to work in different areas of stockbroking. So investment advice is one. if you really want to give investment advice. So there is research, there is administration, there's so many other areas.
It branches out to various areas.
Yeah.
On a lighter note, Mr. Rajeev, I would like to ask you, did you always think that you will be heading into the industry, or did you have other plans when you started off?
Not really, no. Unfortunately, when I started and I left school, it was many years ago, and there were very limited options, unlike today. You
Of
had to
course.
be either an engineer or an accountant or a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. So as I remember, as soon as I left school, I joined a very glamorous job into an airline.
Right.
Soon after school as a management trainee. It was very glamorous, but very soon I found I could do much more. And then of course left for university, etc. And then I came back and joined a finance company, and I was there for quite some time. But after working for a fair amount of time, I saw my realization that I should be doing something more that can benefit society at large, as opposed to creating wealth for a group of shareholders. That prompted me really, I think, to come into the stock market. I initially joined the depository and worked my way up there. This is my second innings at the stock exchange. I think I found my calling here because there's a higher purpose. It's not really only catering to shareholders, but here I am now able to do something substantial for the betterment of all the stakeholders. It can be shareholders, companies, investors,
and the overall
students,
economy as well.
And also there's an impact overall in the country. So it's a good feeling that you're doing something productive in your life.
Sir, as a seasoned individual in the industry, how would you advise someone who is wanting to make an entrance into the stock market in any capacity? What would be your advice?
Yes, so I think there are a number of ways that you can get involved in the stock market. Maybe as an investor, and we spoke about that. You can make a career in the stock market, and there are lots of openings at the stock exchange, at the Securities and Exchange Commission. There are a number of market intermediaries like investment banks, margin providers, credit rating agencies, the whole lot. And there are a number of institutions that do different functions in the capital market. So as a career, you have lots of openings, stockbroker firms, listed companies. So you have a large number of openings there. And the third and the most important is like entrepreneur. Why not do your own business? And so it's not just about doing a job. I think we need more people to be entrepreneurs, to set up their own jobs, not to go for a job but create jobs. So I think as an entrepreneur you can always also make a mark, and as I said, through the SME board you can get yourself listed as well. So I think different pathways to get in.
Sir, on that note, talking about the importance of the stock exchange, I mentioned this at the initial part of our conversation, that the stock exchange plays a vital role in an economy. How important is it for Sri Lanka at this juncture of time?
So if you look at the importance in terms of the overall economy, we measure it by a matrix called market cap to GDP. Market capitalization is, you take all the shares that are issued, multiply by the market price, you get a market capitalization. And our market capitalization is about 5 trillion as of now. Now that you take it as a percentage of our GDP. Right now it's about less than 20%, which is not good. If you take other countries like India, it's about 80%. If you take Malaysia, it's 100%. If you take Thailand, it's nearly 100%. So the importance of the stock market in the economy, I think we can be better represented. But having said that, the stock market plays a vital role in, I think, as acting as a barometer for investor sentiment. It's a very good measure of gauging investor sentiment and investor confidence in the country. So that's one vital part, and of course it plays a very vital role in playing a role in catalyzing capital, mobilizing capital for industry. Can be the private sector, can be the state sector. Now for example, if you look at this year, we have facilitated up to October over 124 billion rupees in terms of debt, in terms of equity, and in terms of rights issues. And this is probably a record this year. The last time we had over 100 billion rupees in capital was, I think, in 2021. So even if you go back 8-9 years, we have not had this figure. So we have been able to facilitate that amount of capital to be raised, which will fuel growth in companies, in the corporate sector. So they will make use of this money to set up new industry, to expand, to create jobs, and that's the linkage with the economy. It adds to the GDP of the country.
So what do you think the next 5 to 10 years would look like for the Colombo Stock Exchange?
We are very positive. I think the fact that we have stability politically, and if we can see for the next 5 years political and economic stability, I think the stock market can only do better and better. We are quite upbeat and positive. That is the reason why, as I said before, we are continuing to invest in infrastructure, and we are readying ourselves for a boom. We are hopeful that we can efficiently broad base the stock market and encourage more people to get in, both locally and also, of course, very importantly, how we can encourage foreign investors to look at Sri Lanka.
So from a personal point of view, this question is, throughout your personal journey in this industry, what has been the biggest challenge you had to encounter, and how did you come out of it?
I think my role here is about managing people and managing different stakeholder groups. So you have the regulators, you have intermediaries like stockbrokers, investment banks, then you have listed companies, you have investors, you have your staff, and each segment will have their own agenda and their motives, and so I think the success of it is to get everybody together and work in a balanced manner to take this forward. So the greatest challenge is about managing these different stakeholder relationships, and I think if you can do that successfully, you will be a success, and that is a key probably component.
Definitely. As we wind things up, Mr. Rajeeva, I think we usually end with our guest giving out some words of wisdom, especially for the youth that are watching us today. What sort of words do you have?
I think my key message would be, don't look for jobs, create jobs, become an entrepreneur, because Sri Lanka very, very badly needs a lot of entrepreneurs, and that's the only way we can really build our economy. So don't wait till somebody gives you a job or creates a job for you.
So
you yourself should go out there and create jobs, and I think we have some very, very smart people who can do that, and there's enough space now, particularly in IT. There is a lot of AI work that needs to be done, and I think in that space there is a lot of room for innovation. So my call is tell
and maybe to remain here, and instead of stepping out of the country, remain in the country and create more opportunities.
Yeah. So if you do set up your business, you're going to stay here. So that's the message I think I would like to give.
Perfectly said. And on that note, we thank you for joining us today. And I was in conversation with Mr. Rajeeva Bandaranaike, the CEO of the Colombo Stock Exchange. Wishing you all the best, sir.
Thank you.
Well, as we wrap things up on yet another week, join me again next Monday for a story that will ignite change. Until we meet again, stay safe.